There have been a lot of webinars lately. It has been death by Zoom, but I think it was a really interesting opportunity to watch different people present.
The really brilliant speaker, they remain authentic, so they remain themselves.
The most engaging speaker I've seen was one where he really addressed the audience when he was speaking. You could tell that he was very familiar with his topic. He knew it in and out. And so when he spoke, it was like he was just speaking to you.
The lectures I actually have in best memories are those where the person brings him or herself into the lecture.
I actually quite like imperfection, which doesn't mean I like sloppy, unprepared presentations, but I hate losing the real person in there to something that's extremely smooth and structured and perfectly run.
One that I remember so well, this amazing endocrinologist, she had a story. You see, that was the difference. Everyone else appeared to be presenting data, but she actually told a story that had a flow.
First thing is, I think about whom I'm going to give a lecture to, because I pitch the levels, how I present what I want to talk is to my audience. It's a big difference if it's a purely scientific community or if it's a mixed with lay people, if it's your own discipline or if it's a broader medical group. So it's very important to think to who you are speaking to.
Not adapting to the audience for me is the number one flop I see happening, basically.
Every talk should be tailored to that audience. And I mean characteristics of that audience in terms of their expertise levels, as well as language and cultural norms. For example, there are talks that I give that have to be interpreted in another language. And so I realized I need to budget more time for those. Speak in shorter sentences because they may or may not need to be interpreted either actually by a translator or in that person's head.
When I start making a presentation, I usually jot down on paper what are the key take-homes. In many ways, I'm starting out with the conclusions of the talk.
I like being on subject matter that I'm more comfortable with. I will basically mind map out the presentation on paper, then start building it into slides.
I think one of the biggest mistakes is to pack too many slides together in a talk. That was clearly a mistake I used to make a lot when I was a lot younger. For a 10-minute talk, I would sometimes have 24 slides, which was entirely too many.
When you plan a lecture, less is always more. For how I plan my lecture is that I plan 1 slide per minute. So if I have 20 minutes to present my data, I don't have more than 20 slides. If I only have 10 minutes, I have 10 slides.
I try to make sure that the whole story has a flow, and then the slides come in according to that storyline. And the papers come in to support that storyline. Now, this is something I've, again, done fairly recently. When I was younger, it was a very different approach that I took.
Intuitively, when one is new, one wants to put all the sentences, all the context there because you're worried you're forgetting something. So it's a skill one has to practice with time. And you will see that most experienced speakers have less and less and less text on their slides.
I like my slides to be simple. If a picture is the best way to convey the message, just put that picture on the slide. Don't put any text. You can be the text. You can speak through what that picture or that graphic means. If I have a slide with text on it, I follow the 7x7 rule. No more than 7 words per line, no more than 7 lines per slide.
Those slides are really my prompts almost. Very basic and down to, words, images sometimes if they're appropriate, but really fairly skimpy presentations really in regards to the slides.
If you have too much on the slide, someone's actually trying to spend time digesting what you have on the slide, which detracts from their attention to you. So use yourself as a way to really be able to convey the information on the slide, but keep the slides very, very simple. One thing I would caution against is using too much animation in a good presentation. This is a mistake we often make because we think of animation as a tool to help you be able to carry the audience with you. But I would say that the content should really speak for yourself, and the delivery should really help you carry from one area to the next.
I actually always use black text on white. I'm never using blue and yellows and pinks and reds and greens. When I listen to lecture, I prefer less colorful and dramatic animations because it distracts me actually from the content.
Sometimes when you hear yourself speak, as opposed to think about what you're going to say, you hear something that you didn't appreciate just thinking through your slide content. So I think that that's really, really important.
I will literally be in my lounge room with what I use as the microphone, which is going to be the remote control of the television, pushing on my chin as in a real circumstance, and I'll have the timer on my slide set and I'll be going through it.
It's important that you practice the lecture while you are standing. Your voice is different when you stand. Ideally in front of a mirror, you put your laptop in front that the mirror is also there, and you can see yourself lifting your chin, projecting yourself to the audience, and then you read through your content. And I really would recommend, if you are not doing that frequently, you have to practice your lecture 4 or 5 times to make sure you are in your timelines.
Exceeding one's allotted time during a presentation is a no-no.
I have 3 levels of practice. If it's a really short presentation, that is what I call Mary Had a Little Lamb type practice, which means I script it and memorize it and practice it to the extent that I can go, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb, Mary had a little lamb. My brain could be turned off. I could be just smiling and I could still sprout the whole thing. The second level, I have scripted main points in each slide. I know exactly what I'm going to say and how I'm going to begin each slide and how I'm going to link from that slide to the next. So I have memorized the order of my slides always, because that's the only way you can link. You can't see the next slide, but you got to link the story so that the next slide doesn't come like, huh? It's like, oh, it's part of the story. And then level 3 preparation is sort of the relaxed one. And the relaxed one would be something, for example, I prepared and delivered already 10 times or something, and I just want to give it in a new way to speak to the current audience better. But I know the data down pat. It's just, I want to nuance it to fit the audience better. And for that, I always prepare my opening line. Because I feel that once you started on the right foot, you kind of gain confidence.
We're now in an age where we're listening to things all the time, whether it's something we're seeing visually face to face or virtually, or listening to podcasts. So we've all honed our ears to really hear someone who can speak well. And so I think, making sure you've got great organization as well as a delivery that makes it very engaging, I think is critical to a good presentation.
I'll simplify it to the 3 S's, the story, the slides, the speaker mode.
When you give a lecture, it's important that you walk up, you look in your audience, you connect with your audience, you take a deep breath before you start to speak. It's particularly important for women who are often, when they're stressed, get a more high-pitched voice. So if you start speaking under stress, your voice becomes higher and you sound stressed and your message is not coming across well. So simply by practicing to walk, look in the audience, taking the deep breaths, saying good day, looking again, and then starting to talk, it makes a big difference on the impression the content of your presentation is making to the audience.
When people are nervous, and I was quite nervous when I first started speaking, we talk faster. but that doesn't necessarily mean that the audience listens faster. I'm a nervous speaker to start out with. When I was a fellow, I used to beg my clinical preceptor for a beta blocker just to help me get over that anxiety.
I used to be extremely nervous when I was a junior cardiology trainee and researcher, and I had to present my first time my data at the American Heart Association meeting. I was extremely nervous. I had a lot of text on my slides. I virtually read my entire slide. I never looked up.
We have a training program here at Duke where all of our fellows, when they're delivering their first few talks, will also deliver this in front of a group of many other fellows and faculty. And I think this is really important. We actually even video record the first few presentations so you can actually look at yourself as you're presenting. It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world to do. But it's quite effective.
I suppose the only thing I know how to do facing nerves is breathe. It sounds silly and basic, but that's really the most efficient way of doing things.
I do still get nervous. Every talk, if you tested my heart rate, it's always going to be above 100. This is just something that you get used to after a while. The more confident you are about what you're about to say, the less the nerves bother you.
The go-to, breathe. When you're about to go on, or it's a big deal, you've rehearsed already, and you just can feel your heart pounding. I really breathe.
I'll often remember things about or revisualize a great presentation that I've done, or revisualize how much pleasure you do get out of it, because even if the nerves are there, usually when you get rolling, there's pleasure in it.